Hey, it's Kate with Cake Parenting, and today we're gonna ask a question from Susan, who wrote in and said, is it okay to let my baby cry it out at night? So this is an extremely loaded question, one that I didn't really even want to talk about, but after some thinking, I do think it's really important to kind of give you my 2 cents on all of the research and things in my head and all the things I've tried with my little one. So it's a gray area, definitely. It's not like a black and white, yes, cry it out, don't do it. It's not that simple. But one thing that I've come to understand is that as you're training and teaching your little one to learn how to self-soothe, and you're parenting them throughout the night, and you're helping them to learn to trust themselves. When I wake up and I'm alerted, I can in fact put myself back to sleep. It's a process. And during that process, there will be tears. That's the way I like to look at it. So, I certainly am not a proponent of not going to your child when they need you as a personal thought, I think that the bond and the connection you have with your child and that trust you have with them is just too important. So as your baby is getting older, they're into their 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th month or longer, and they're still awaking and kind of needing nourishment, or they're used to feeding, so they need to feed or suck on their pacifier, whatever that is that's calming them, or they just need the reassurance from you. I think it's okay in those later months to start to go to them a little bit less and less, or stay with them fewer minutes. Maybe if you were picking them up and rocking them, maybe you're just rubbing their back, doing less and less for them to start to trust themselves that I can handle this. I wake up, I got it. I can roll over, I can calm, I can settle myself. One thing to remember, of course, is that babies aren't born necessarily with this natural self-soothing ability. It's not necessarily something you're doing wrong. And again, we need to kind of help them build the trust in themselves and build sort of the ability to do that. So it does take time too. If you read books about any quick fixes, in my experience and experience from my friends and other mamas that I know, it's just not that simple. So if you read a quick fix book and it doesn't work for you, don't be discouraged. It does take time, and your child will not be 20 years old and still needing you to come rub their back to get them back to sleep, so don't worry. Also remember, we all wake at night, whether you're babies or adults. We wake in between sleep cycles, and it's perfectly normal. So babies might be waking every hour to 2 hours, depending on their age, and that's okay. What we need to do is just help them to learn to put themselves back to sleep, essentially. And by about 8 to 10 months or so, as a general guideline, your baby shouldn't need to wake up to be nourished from food. And if they're healthy and they don't have any health issues, then they shouldn't need to be fed during the night. And they should be sleeping between 8 to 10 hours at 8 to 10 months at a time. So that's the goal there, is to have them sleeping 8 to 10 hours without needing you to get up and to comfort them, to soothe them, to pick them up, or to feed them. There's no way my son's gonna be sleeping 8 to 10 hours though, 1 month from now. Not a chance. He still wakes many times during the night because we're still working through this. So another thing to consider when we're talking about extending those sleep periods, where basically baby doesn't need us between those periods of sleep, something to consider is what their habits are. So if your child is used to eating, even if they're a year old, if they're used to being woken up and being nursed or given a bottle once in the middle of the night or twice in the middle of the night, just because you read something that says, oh, at 12 months, they don't need to eat all night, doesn't mean that they can just give up cold turkey, right? You've established with your little one certain habits, and you have to kind of wean those habits slowly. A habit might be a pacifier, it might be soothing with food, it might be comforting with your touch or picking them up. So we're gonna slowly back away from those. So again, to get back to the topic of sort of, should I let my baby cry it out? As you're going to your child less and less, as you're doing less and less over time, but you're still listening to them and you're kind of, aware of their needs, and each child is so different and individual, you're gonna have likely periods of tears that happen. So if your child is calming down and you say, okay, now I'm going to leave, I'm gonna go back to bed, and a few minutes of crying happens, in my opinion, that's just part of the game. And that's kind of the way I like to approach the cry it out question. That's a really loaded, hard thing to handle. I think a lot of sleep experts in some way will come to that conclusion, meaning that they'll say, Some tears are okay. During the day, you're giving your child so much love, affection, and nurturing that if you have a few minutes of crying at night in order to kind of teach and guide them into these more restful nights, then it's just fine. So to each his own, listen to your child, but that's my best answer to should I let my baby cry it out. Please give me your feedback. Let's talk about it. Definitely send me questions, tweet at me at Cake Parenting, and we'll see you next time.